So in our world, we have all kinds of data. Data or information collected from surveys, observations, or other means. Well, what do we do with all of this data? Well, in the last concept you saw that we can find the mean, the median, the mode, and also determine the range of the data set. We can also see if there are any outliers. In this concept, we want to be able to take that data and show it in some different ways. So one thing we're going to talk about first of all is the definition of frequency. Frequency, and how we'll use it, is defined as the number of times a data value occurs. For example, how many times do we have the number 3 in a data set? Frequency also can mean how often. Now, there's a couple different ways in which we can showcase the data. And one is a stem and leaf plot. And I want to show you just kind of a quick example of this. So let's say we've got a data set with the numbers 27, 29, 31, 37, and 38. Well, imagine you had 100 pieces of data. Well, yeah, it would take a lot to list them, and right now our list might not be real meaningful. So what we're going to do is we're going to think of a tree or a plant. And on that plant has a stem, a starting value. And off of that stem are a bunch of leaves. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the tens digit, namely the 2 and the 3, and we're going to put them on top of each other. And we're going to draw a line next to that. So the 2 actually stands for numbers in the 20s. The 3 actually stands for numbers in the 30s. Now I'm going to take that 7 and I'm going to put it next to the 2. So the 7 really means 27. And I'm going to do the same thing with the 9. So now that 9 really means 29. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the 30s. Notice everything's in order. So here's 31, a 1 for that. Here's 37. And here's 38. So from this showcase of the data, we can see that there are more numbers in the 30s than there are in the 20s. Now what we can do then is we can group this data, and we've already kind of grouped it into the 20s and into the 30s, and make kind of a bar graph. It's called a histogram. And histograms are used with frequency tables, which you're going to make here in just a moment, and stem and leaf plot data. So to make a histogram, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a y-axis. We're going to have an x-axis. Now our x-axis is going to represent the data itself. So the smallest number in our data set is in the 20s. So we're going to start this first point at 20. Now our first group of data is going to go from, let's say, 20 all the way up to 29, and that's based on the first line in the stem and leaf plot. So we're going to go up to 30 on our histogram, and then we're going to put one at 40 as well. Now on the y-axis, these numbers are going to represent the frequency. Well, I have 2 numbers that are in the 20s and 3 numbers in the 30s. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my frequency on the y-axis. So 0, 1, 2, and 3. We're going to make one of these more and talk more about these in just a second. But we have 2 numbers in the 20s. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bar that goes up to a frequency of 2 and goes from 20 over to 30. That bar means that I have two values between 20 up to 30, but not including 30. And then I'm going to make a bar for 3. or a frequency of 3. So these 5 pieces of data that we started with can be transformed into a stem and leaf plot, and then transformed into a histogram as well. So now I'd like to take a stem and leaf plot that's already made for us. And we're going to find the mean, the median, the mode, and the range of the data set. And then we're going to make what's known as a frequency table, and we're going to make a histogram formally as well. So again, on the stem and leaf plot, these numbers, the 0, 1, 2, and 3, those stand for the tens place. These numbers over here are the leaves, and those stand for the ones place. Therefore, this number right here, this 5, is really the number 25. So, to find the mean, how do we do that? Well, to find the mean, I would add all of these values up, which means I would add the following. I have a 0, a 1, a 3, a 3, a 4, a 7, followed by a 10, a 10, a 10, 11, 15, 20, 25, and 31. So I would add all those together. And then I would divide by however many values there are. Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like there's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's the division that I would do. So instead of going through the calculations for that, I'll share with you what the median is. And it's a rounded value. And it comes out to be 10.71. Now that represents, in the context of this problem, the number of movies watched per person in 1 month. And that's a central tendency value. Which means if we were to select another person, we could assume that that person might watch around 10 or 11 movies a month. Now to find the median, here's how we do this. To find the median, we cross off the smallest number, 0. We cross off the biggest number, which is 31. And we keep doing this. So now we cross off the next smallest number, 1. The next biggest number, 25. And we keep going through this process. And we end up with a couple numbers in the middle. Since they're both the same, that's perfectly fine. We can go ahead and just say that the median is 10. Now the median is 10 because those zeros are sitting next to a stem of 1. Now the mode is the number that appears the most often. And there are 3 zeros next to that 1, so the mode is also 10. Now to calculate the range, we would take the highest number, which is 31, and subtract the smallest number, which is 0. So 31 minus 0 is 31. And that's how we can calculate the mean, the median, the mode, and the range from a stem and leaf plot. So now what we want to do is we want to make a frequency table, but instead of listing all the data individually and seeing how many there are, what we can do is we can group them. So we're going to try to create about 5 groups here. So since we have a range of 31, and if we divide that by 5 groups, we get about 6 or 7 for each group. So let's go with 6. So to make a group frequency table, this is what I do. The first thing I do is I start with my smallest number, 0. And since I'm going to have a width in each group of 6, I'm going to go 0 to 6. Now my next group that I'm going to have is going to start with the next number after 6, which is 7. So if I add 6 to that, 7, I'm going to get to 13. My next group will have to start at 14. If I add 6 to 14, that means that group will end at 20. The next group will start at 21. I'll add 6, that's 27. My next group will have to start at 28, add 6, that's 34. Okay, to find my frequency, what I do is I go back to my table and I count how many numbers are between 0 and 6. Well, I've got a lot of them crossed off, but hopefully you can kind of see yours better than I can. So it looks like I've got 0, 1, 3, 3, and 4. So I've got 5 numbers in the first group. 7 to 13. It looks like I have 5 numbers in that group. How many numbers between 14 and 20? Well, I think there's 2. There's 1 in the next group, and there's 1 in the very last group. We don't have to use every row in the table. 4 to 5 groups are sufficient in most cases. So now formally we build the histogram. So to create the histogram, we make the y-axis and we make the x-axis. And the x-axis is going to be the number of movies, so I'll put that title down there. And the y-axis will be the frequency, or how often or how many in each group. Alright, so here we go. Well, the numbers on the x-axis are going to be the first numbers listed in my group frequency table. So I'm going to have, to start with, I'm going to have a 0. And then I'm going to make a mark for 7 and 14. Evenly spacing these, 21, 28, and then I'll have one at 35 as well. Because if I had another group, that one would start at 35. Now my biggest frequency is 5, so I'm just going to go on the y-axis up to 5. I can go by 1s in this case. I could also go by 2s if I wanted to. So, to finish my histogram, I have 5 in the first group, 0 to 6. So I'm going to make a bar. I'm going to go across at 5. I'm going to go down to 7. That means in that first group from 0 to 6, not quite to 7 yet, there are 5. I'm going to make a bar. But notice the bars are attached. 5 in the next group. And then there's 2. And there's 1. And there's 1. And that's how you make a histogram. So these are different ways to organize the data once we've collected it. And we can also take the data that's in these situations, whether it's a histogram, group frequency table, or stem and leaf plot, and find some more out about it, such as calculating the central tendencies.